Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. I'm just waking up. The sparrows are clickety clacking. This is waking up after falling asleep, talking to an inanimate object that is connected with all of life at this moment. Still endeavoring to understand the nature of the influence, the reason for availing myself, oneself, to the harms of this buffered communication and relation. All that being said, here is what I have to say. Supposedly. One other thing is that it's actually earlier than I anticipate. I get up. The sparrows, I know, yo, hold up. Come on, y'all. Serious. Beauty, but still. Alright. Got up. Have yet to do prayer meditation, which is what is the priority, routine. And yet, here's this. In getting up, not knowing what hour it is, fatigued, daylight already, but the sun is just still rising upon the horizon. Though the soleil is not actually moving, it's the earth, as we understand. Point is orange and blue and colors. And then I'm like, yo, I'm still tired. I'm going back. Blah, blah. So I do that. That was probably about like 5-10 minutes, maybe 15. Do I go TMI? I'll put it like this. That hour of each day, daybreak, when the light is beginning, is a rather potent window of virility. I'll put it like that. So it's also, high energy, generally speaking, collectively speaking. The local cipher is at its height in terms of energy and further. Rush hour. So it also is beautiful, appropriate, and commanded time to do prayer and meditation, to optimize that exercise, the benefits, the insight, the communication, the cipher, the relation of earth and heaven at that moment to guide one through the day. Yes. So when I go back, plot out, and wake up, it's also a time when not doing those things, the mind goes towards other pursuits. It can be temptation pursuits. It can also be nightmarish pursuits. But all that being said, I went back, knocked out, maybe probably 15 minutes, wake up, and where the scene when I knock out is orange and blue. Soleil upon the horizon, colors. I get up, again, it's all white, hazy, overcast. Excuse me, with a clickety clack of the sparrow. So here it is. Okay. For this moment, continuation from yesterday, further explanation, example, details. All right. Does this look familiar? Okay. Try to say three things. And a lot of this grogginess is caused from the oil and salt consumed late yesterday evening after spending a lot of time away from the house, arriving back fatigued, less inclined towards making food, but also less inclined towards purchasing something, getting further enveloped in the imperialism, the system. It always, there's benefits, conveniences, pleasures, but then also pollution in each of those endeavors within the system. So, less inclined yesterday, so further inclined towards making food and doing that late, salt and oil, blah, blah. And so next day, blah, blah, effects. Three, so that's part of the throat thing. Three things to share. All right. I'm just going to do it in this order and then endeavor to put it together upon the conclusion, Elohim willing. First joint is the Emperor's New Wings. So there's a supposed children's story. It's actually a pedophilia culture story when you look at it. What is that? That is a blue jay. Okay. Emperor's, it's called, what are serious? Something is chasing the blue jay. Yo, what's that? What is that? It's brown. It sounds like a robin actually, but it looks a little bit thin. That would be a first. It wouldn't be surprising though, because robins, like I said before, robins be doing things. But that would be the first time I would see a robin chasing a sparrow, or a robin chasing a blue jay. It does sound like a robin. Interesting that. All right. Anyways, so the Emperor's New Clothes. We're talking about the Emperor's New Wings, but to explain the Emperor's New Clothes again, it's a pedophilia culture story. It's about a man who goes around naked, and it's supposed to be funny, and it's supposed to tell a point about pride and ego and deception. But the whole endeavor of normalizing and making funny a naked man walking around in public in front of children, and additionally, and you're telling that and I'm told that as a child. I'm reminded also, as a side note, again, I've said this before, but like another example of this pedophile culture of normalizing these heinous kind of scenarios. I mean, this is after my day of growing up, whatever, but I'm aware of a popular British children's television series or whatever, and I know there are films about it as well, where the actor is like an eccentric character, and he's humorous, and a lot of his humor is like physical humor, physical comedy. So he doesn't do a lot of talking, if any at all, from what I've seen from clips or whatever. But he's just kind of very, very weird and funny, and kind of interacts with people and shows the weirdness of other people without saying things. He just his mannerisms and everything. So okay, that seems comparatively innocuous, and it's easier for children to relate because he's not saying anything. Children can relate to the nonverbal communication, even from different languages. So, and then he's in different scenes of British society. So it's a way of learning about all these different scenes or whatever. So, anyways, And then, I mean, after I've seen this for years and years, um, as an adult, the clips, and then at one point a few years ago, I see a clip where it's showing another one of these episodes, and this particular episode, for whatever reason, don't know, but he's checking into a hotel, so he's just doing his own mannerisms and does everything without speaking, and checks in and da 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 da, gets into his room, and then he takes off his clothes and is walking around in his boxer drawers. And it's like, well, hold up, what up? This is supposed to be for children, and you're normalizing the visual of a man in a hotel room in his boxers and is normal, pretending it's normal. That's pedophilia culture. We being careful to recognize that it's other than an actual sexual encounter between an adult and a child, but it's normalizing that circumstance, that situation, so that in actual life, when a child is already conditioned to perceive that as normal, that child is increasingly susceptible to being victimized by those predators that lurk. So, when that type of culture is mainstream, everybody knows it, everybody sees it, everybody, oh, it's funny, funny. The adults are saying it, the teachers are saying it, the parents are saying it. So the children's like, oh, when the child just happens to be in the vicinity of a hotel, and the guy says, huh, here it is, and gets in his boxers, child has already been conditioned to think, oh, that's normal, that's funny. It's I'm not gonna say the name, but the ubiquitous airplane engines amidst the hazy white. So anyways, that's an example of pedophilia culture and the conditioning of adults and children, because presumably, seemingly, parents are comparatively oblivious to this. Parents are caught up in doing too many things. Many parents are often, and when I say parents, I'm saying in absolute, like all parents, but in general, commonly, by and large, parents are caught up in doing so many things, have already been so cut down by the conditioning of society and just doing whatever is keeping in line with everybody else, and trying to get a little bit further in that experience, that when there's a collective and intentional inoculation of the pedophilia acculturation, it's very difficult to acknowledge that, to be so to sober up, like, hold up, wait, nah, what, but everybody's like, oh, did you see the new episode, da 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 da. And so in those conditions, the child is increasingly vulnerable. Children are increasingly vulnerable. So anyways, that's an example of pedophilic culture. Now, the story of the emperor's new clothes is also an example of that. Now, in this story, there is a man who describes himself as a clothier, who makes clothes. Supposedly, he arrives in this kingdom or whatever. He's a con artist, and so he arrives in this kingdom or whatever. And for however he's able to do it, he gets into the company of the emperor, the king, head honcho, and he gets ingratiated to the whole court, so that the whole court of the king, all of the king's men, like see this clothier, and they're just like under his spell. What they say. There's a word like for that charisma, that charm. But anyways, the whole court and everything else like that. Now the king is the ego. He's pompous. Da 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 da. He has to be number one all the time. So when he sees that all his courtmen are like, oh, this clothier, he's fantastic, da da da, he's like, okay, fine, we'll see. Well, I'll have to have the best clothes. So that's when the stranger, how about that? We'll call him the stranger. That's when the stranger employs his deception. So he starts like to go to work and making the finest clothing for the emperor. He takes, he's meticulous, and the whole time He's getting people to buy into it. Like, oh, what do you think about this color? And do you see the pattern, the intricacy of this pattern? And da 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 da. So, and meanwhile, he's not making anything. It's all invisible. It's nothing. But he's getting people to buy into. Oh, that is fantastic. Oh, da 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 da. So again, it is a valuable lesson about deception. People lying and lying to themselves in order to fit in and agree with everybody else who's lying to themselves. So and the manipulator, the stranger, who's able to do it, knowing that everybody else is caught up in this game. So he's utilizing that against them and getting paid. Oh, he's getting paid to put all this together. So, and he's doing nothing. So by the time he finishes it, oh, look at this. Look at this. It's exquisite. And so the emperor, who is the head honcho and everything, is supposed to be number one and everything else, he is also subject to that same thing, because when all his court is saying, well, that's the best, that's the finest clothing I've ever seen, he either has to stand up and be like, yo, no, that's nothing, or and face like the scrutiny, the collective consensus scrutiny of his court, or he can say, jump on and say, well, that's fantastic, that's the best I've seen as well, and to retain the conformity, the number one position in that conformity, even though he's like, there's nothing there, but that's what he does. So that's what he does. When the stranger completes the project and presents it to the emperor, which is nothing, he hands it to the emperor. There's a ceremony, everything else like that. He hands it to the emperor, and the emperor proceeds to put it on in front of everybody. And so he's naked. He's wearing nothing. The watered down version of it, or whatever might have been, he had on drawers or something like that. But otherwise, he's naked, wearing nothing in front of his court. And then the stranger says, oh, the emperor must parade this through the entire kingdom and present his clothing to the rest of the people so that they can marvel at this exquisite work. So he goes around the town, the kingdom, whatever, parading this nudity, pretending it's actually clothing. And so that's the humor, but it's also the lesson of the lengths that people go to conform, to just keep up with everybody else. So there is a benefit, lesson, and principle that's learned, but in the process, the child who reads this, the child who hears this story, is acculturated to the humor of a naked man showing himself in public. We call that, what that is, exhibitionism. How about that? If a naked man is walking around outside in actuality, under arrest, at least back in the day. Don't know about it too much now, because when we look at photographs and the advertisements, we see half-naked people anyways, but I guess it has yet to get to that personal level. But then, given what people are wearing, sports bras, bikinis, and everything else like that, going to the store, going to the grocery store. Anyways, not advocating, not suggesting that, just concerned about that normalcy. Back in the day, somebody would do that. Arrest, take them away. Inappropriate. But as a children's story, children are introduced to that condition, to that. So now that's the emperor's new clothes. And that lesson about pretending there's something when there's nothing can be humorous and seemingly innocuous when it's something like clothing. And the risk that's involved is basically embarrassing the king's self, aside from the whole pedophilia thing. However, here we go. The emperor's new wings. Because it's one thing to fool somebody into pretending that they have clothing when they don't. It's another thing if the stranger, instead of making clothes, says that he can make wings that enable people to fly, and says, "Oh, look at these tremendous wings. This is amazing." And all the court says, "Oh yes, those wings are amazing. That's beautiful. There's wow." And the implications of the emperor taking those non-existent, invisible wings, the deception, and then endeavoring to fly, jumping off a cliff with those invisible wings. It's a different consequence than just walking around the town. It's plummeting. So, that being said, the Emperor's New Wings at this moment today is recognizing, sobering up, awakening to the fact that these lies that kinfolk have been so enveloped in, when we talk about the perceived virtues and benevolence of conventional authority, governments, even religions, Aika, are unbased, are unfounded, are much less than people want to believe. Examples of this involve 9/11, all the lies that government tells the United States, tells its citizens, and the citizens just accept without acknowledging what's actually going on and keeping in order, not rocking the boat. There's been generations of that since World War II, but before that, it's the nature of things. And at some point, it becomes so severe that it's the emperor's new clothes, and it becomes even further severe when people still don't acknowledge the emperor's new clothes. Then the strangers take it to next levels. The emperor's new wings, and in when cats have sat quiet in the distance and be like, no, that's no clothes there. He's naked, but they know if they say that, yo, it's bad business. So they say, okay, cats are just tripping. They're doing this. That's one thing. But when kinfolk are starting to parade towards the mountaintops with these invisible wings and start jumping, it becomes prudent, necessary, incumbent, called upon for kinfolk who are sober and who do see that to say, yo, that's not wings. That don't fly. Don't do that. Serious. So that's what we're dealing with in terms of the emperor's new wings and the state of affairs, the affairs of state. It ain't easy because cats is deep in it, and it's not a matter of being hostile or antagonistic or trying to conquer. It's just a matter of like, serious, those are not wings. All right, so that's the beginning joint. That's the first joint. This is the beginning of the day, when the brain is at its strongest, when it has proper rest and nutrition. I'm aware of what the second joint is. I'm working on the third joint. Mm. Mm. Okay, get the semblance of it. All right. So the second joint is this. There's a film. I shared a lot of this already before, but I'm putting it together in this particular sequence. There's a film from Scotland from wow, almost 30 years ago now, the 90s, late 90s. It's called Train Spotting. Again, as I've said before, it's a very interesting, very informative, insightful film. I don't necessarily recommend it to people because there's a lot of stuff in it that has pollution. It's about drug addiction, and it gets actually it doesn't get as graphic as other films. It's somewhat of a comedy, not a comedy, but like a anyway. There's humor to it, but it is a drama. And it's that Scottish humor. That's British, English, Irish, Scottish. But anyways, two pants dirty. That's what I remember from Edinburgh. Anyways, one of the things. Beautiful. Train Spotting. So in this film, there's a young man who's the protagonist with his crew. They're heroin addicts. And in the film, being Scottish, that's British, but Scottish, there's a certain disdain towards things English because of British. So it's interesting insight about that, about being part of the same kind of ethnic group, and additionally, but having a vitriol towards the imperialists within the ethnic group. So such is the nature of Scotland, even though it had the opportunity of liberation politically just a decade or so ago, and decided otherwise. Presumably, believe there's still the Bank of Scotland, though. Anyway, all that being said, there's a classic line in the film, amidst this culture of disdain of Scotland towards England. So in this line in the film, the character, that he's also the narrator, he says that England is a country full of wankers. Side note, peace and blessings to all kinfolk of England, but that's the quote. England is a country full of wankers. And the only thing worse than being a country full of wankers is being colonized by a country full of wankers. So, for the whole former British Empire, that's very valuable insight. Very, actual insight and valuable insight, because for these Anglophiles, these English-speaking kinfolk, who have this innate presumption of the superiority and supremacy of things English, to hear from the nearby brethren of some of the foibles of the culture of England, literally being men who masturbate, figuratively and literally, as part of the nature of the Republic, and in doing that, and being perceived as pathetic, and additionally because generally in a general society, a man who can't get a woman is seen in that way, but because of that practice, is able to concentrate on conquering things, technology. And so even though kinfolk don't invest in a relationship with a woman, are able to conquer others physically with technology, weapons, and additionally. And so it's this thing of an actual man, a man's man, who's strong and masculine and has a woman, maybe has a few women. And so, he's strong and everything else like that. But at the same time, he's conquered. He's a subject to the wanker, who has a coalition of enforcers. So it's that paradox. It's not even a paradox necessarily. It's just, somewhat is, but it's this trippy phenomenon, paradigm, and it's the nature of the Republic, of a masculine man in the primal sense, who should be the alpha, being controlled and told what to do, conquered by the beta, not even the beta, but even like the gamma, delta, or whatever it is that the kinfolk say. Um, so that's the nature of imperialism. Then, well, it's the nature of the republic. It's also the nature of the contemporary imperialism, because the contemporary imperialism utilizes the republic as a methodology for the imperialism. Imperialism doesn't necessarily have to be a republic. However, given how vast the nature of political organization is today, it does require that kind of depersonalized methodology. For example, like, I mean, an empire is like just a vast land of states that are amalgamated, and historically it can be under the control of one man, like a monarchy. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a republic. But in that scenario, that one man has so much to control, and it's very, very tenuous. And back in the day, it would be a smaller region of land, and it would be a smaller population of people. So the connection between the king and the lowest in that totem, or lowest in the pyramid scheme, would be only so much, and so it's still manageable for a man to do that and still be a man. In today's advent, when the population is essentially the world and the land is the world, it's too much, at least by what is known today, for one man to do. For everybody to say, yeah, that's number one man right there. Not for just 4 years or whatever, but no, that's the number one man until the next number one man says otherwise. That's very the mind, what a man needs to know in terms of language and culture and stories to have some credible authority and affinity amongst the masses. Way too much at the moment for any one man to do on this earth today. So instead, it's this revolving thing of the republic, and to do that, it requires the men who are in the colluding plutocratic caves to cut down the ego, cut down the masculinity, in order to have the power sharing and not be at each other. And it's the wanker lifestyle. And in doing that and maintaining a certain efficacy in that, controlling the men around the wankers. So that's where we get into the third joint, which is recognizing the nature of the republic, the nature of corruption and otherwise, and with the purpose of progressing towards healing, well-being, for traditional families, for life on this earth. So I've shared recently about the whole notion, the paradox of the republic, the psychotic or schizophrenic paradox, and the psychotic expectations. That's important to recognize, particularly amongst women. The psychotic expectations of women towards men to be able to do things that are way beyond the capacity of men to do, particularly at this age. Because men are not, there's not an educational program, a conventional mainstream educational program that trains men to be able to properly administrate a government of all the traditions, even just the major traditions of the world. There's still the educational system, the conventional education systems, private, public, parochial, and additionally, still rely upon conquering other entities, other religions, other ethnicities as a premise for authority. There has yet to be a systemic methodology conventionally of genuinely pluralistic education. Many acquire that just through searching in life eventually, but in doing that have to pay dues and let go of opportunities and recognition along that way. So to expect a man to be pluralistic and then at the same time be within the hierarchies of convention and do the same things, predatory behavior of people in convention, it's psychotic expectations. It's just like, I won't say crazy because let go of that, but it is psychotic just to expect somebody, a man particularly, to have that type of capacity to do all those things. And the thing is, that's what's taught. That's what that's the media. That's the conditioning. Everybody should be this. Everybody should be that. And it's psychotic to believe that it's possible. So all of it. It's possible to love everybody and everything else like that, but in doing that, you can't be a CEO, you can't be a president, you can't be a general of a military or whatever else, because that the way to be those things is to collude and to have preset arrangements of conquest of other groups as a premise for getting that trust within the masses of the collective of the army, the military, the corporation, or whatever else it is. In order to be able to do the work. So, anyways, before all that, it's a matter of recognizing the nature of the republic. So, and again, the schizophrenic nature of the republic, because again, it's a matter of, and this is particularly for men, because for men, it's the ego thing. And I'm saying this not necessarily as absolutely derogatory to his ego, but just, and it's not even ego, it's will, and it's you can say even constitution, but it's a man, the integrity of a man's authority and maintaining that, and how the republic requires a man to violate the integrity of his authority by acquiescing, by agreeing to be subordinate to another man's authority. And that's different than compromise. It's different than finding a mutual agreement, a treaty, and sharing. It's a matter of breaking a man's self to accept another man as number one. Because that's enslavement. And that's the schizophrenic nature of the republic. The king-slave schizophrenia of the republic, of democracy, the democratic republic. At one moment, a man is the king, number one. He's controlling, he's the shot caller. And the next moment, he has to abide by the other man, the other shot caller, and additionally. So, at this moment, in the postmodern society, there's just so much conditioning to perceive that as just normal. It's not, it's not healthy, because, again, it violates a man's integrity, his authority, and again, in the post-chauvinist, uber-feminist culture, people say, "Oh, but that's okay. A man should break his integrity." No, and that's exactly wrong. A man should quell his ego and his chauvinism, how he imposes himself upon others, but everybody needs a man to maintain his integrity of what he recognizes as right and wrong. Now, he can learn and he can go better, but not to knowingly violate what he knows to be right for the sake of cooperating with others. That undermines his authority, his respect for himself, his wife's respect for him, his children's respect for him, and additionally, even in the sake of cooperating. This is just the way the system works. Well, guess what? In that working system, the value of man, categorically, across the board, lessens. It deteriorates. And initially, it may be a favorable alternative to a tyrannical monarchy, or whatever the preceding form of governance is. But after a number of generations, that degradation of man is the degradation of the family, is the degradation of society, relationship itself. And in that vacuum of virtue, of relationship, of respect, of well-being, there is increasing emphasis of acquisition, exploitation, accumulation, of materialization. So instead of just recognizing, things are getting messed up, instead it's a matter of, look what you can get over there. There's new land over there. There's new technology of how to take from that land, and additionally. So people pay less attention to what's happening at home and just think of how many further things people can add to the home. until that starts to run out, and then people start to say, "Wait, wait, look what the home again." So, um, that's part of the consequence, the eventual experience of the schizophrenic nature of democratic republic, the king slave paradox. Um, all right, so we're getting to the third thing. That's the third thing, but it goes further. Um, yeah, and it is beneficial to keep this brief because yeah, it's nice to do prayer meditation. That's helpful. Mm. I mentioned before the conversation about the question, how much longer do you think you have to be yourself? And what do you want to do in that window? Again, the consideration, it's not just a matter of the cliche of just like working and like doing that. It's a matter of recognizing what happens to a person in that process of just working for the job and rationalizing it. Well, that's how I provide for my family. Yes, we recognize that's a necessity, but to recognize what happens to a man and a person in that process, the mindset becomes subjected to the employer, the one who's providing the paycheck. The mind, the body becomes sub, subjected, becomes, I'm trying to think of the right words, not necessarily outright owned, but acquiesces to the message of the payroll. And what that looks like is, again, people talking in meaningless euphemisms. Oh, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Ah, well, I can't beat them, join them. That's a little bit heavy, but just things like that are like you get an idea of what's being said, but it's actually nothing's being said. And people talk about current events, what's seen on the news or whatever is going for news these days, um, and then respond to these things, respond to controversies, respond to atrocities, and additionally by like nullifications, by just um, by contributing to a stagnancy where things don't change, because a person already has their arrangement, their contract, their savings account, their arrangements within the system. So we don't want to change. Well, we don't want anything for that to change. And if anything, part of the arrangement is for it to be understood as gradually increasing. As long as it increases commensurate with how it increases for the other people in the system, then it's just a matter of like whatever happens in life, to just kind of, again, provide these nullificating euphemisms. Oh, that's just a sad thing. Da 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 da. And not actually talking about what's going on, not actually doing something to change or otherwise. It's just, well, somebody's assigned to that, so we just have to trust in that. The things that are said are for the sake of just keeping the boat going, and it's actually a pirate ship. So that's what is meant. That is what is being conveyed when we talk about how much longer does one have to be oneself, because increasingly as a youth, there's less of that obligation. There's less of that acquiescence, and less. Some are already in it before leaving the house, before even reaching puberty, even serious. And we're talking about those who are deep in the system. Those are deep in the hierarchy, where And we look at the documentary Seven Up, and it's argued against this, but where in those elite circles and expectations and everything else like that, a child's life is significantly planned out from even before birth, but particularly by age 7, age 13, 14. So is already acculturated to that type of thing, and gets the benefits of it as well, access and this, that, and the other. So for youth who are raised in a comparatively middle, moderate kind of experience, there's still some kind of experience of um, extemporaneousness of not even just individualism or individuality, but just like relationship, particularly priority relationship, meaning relationship that is priority over just conformity. So in that, how one expresses oneself, learns, trips and falls and gets up, and additionally in life experiences, um, it's like genuine. It's not just formulaic and predestined, predetermined, or otherwise. Um, Yet, when a youth gets to that point of completing a formal education, completing that formal rites of passage into being an adult within the system and having those expectation obligations, um, it's a matter of deciding whether to acquiesce, to let go of that life experience and the unpredictability, the unpredestined path, or and it's not even just a matter of unpredestined, but it's a matter of purposeful and connecting with something greater than this earthly experience, or to let go of that and just to attach to the machinery. Um, Now, in honesty, it actually is. Many youth are conditioned to make that transition comparatively smoothly. And it looks like I gave the elite scenario where things are like the child doesn't even have like a say, it doesn't have a will, and it's not, no, doesn't necessarily. I'm not advocating even a child having a say, because we can apply this same similar scenario to like religions and otherwise, where children don't have much of a say, and there's benefit within that. But I just describing in the elite scenarios where things are predetermined for a child from a very early stage in life. There is the middle class scenario, and even upper class scenario, because what I described was a little bit beyond upper class, but it's higher up there. In the middle class scenario, there may be intentions, there may be preparations for a path, predetermined path that the parents and others establish for a child, but a lot of it is determined by the child's actions and performance, and additionally, um, and but even in that middle class experience, um, the children are often conditioned towards eventually making that decision of conformity within the system. Um, Going to a nice school, going to a nice university, and then from that university getting a nice job. And so in each of those stages, the child, the youth is prepared to transition smoothly into the next stage. And people are talked about of like, oh, that's a lucrative opportunity, and da 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 da. Not everybody gets that, and oh, you must have talent, this and the other. So don't mean to sound disparaging of that, but just this is the conditioning, and in that process, the child, youth, adult, um, is guided gradually, often, towards that acquiescence, because as the child, youth, adult matures and progresses, um, the emphasis and the value of that person becomes increasingly a matter of the opportunities of that person, the lucrative opportunities, rather than necessarily who that person is. And I'm not talking about it in an artistic, I have to discover myself, quote unquote, kind of thing. I'm talking about in an existential life purpose. What is this about kind of thing? And some might say potato, but it's other than just being self-involved and doing what one wants to do, and the dilettante kind of self-indulgence. It's a matter of like genuine, again, a relationship with Creator, relationship with creation, relationship with all our relatives, and acknowledging that, honoring that, attending to that. That life purpose. That is some of what is acquiesced in the path of conformity. So, when talking with youth who are still feeling a vibrancy of life, still feel some semblance of autonomy, of self-discovery, but getting further and further conditioned, particularly as being further successful in one's path. The further appropriate question for such youth, like the brethren and sister that I talked with a few weeks ago, and additionally, is who are you? Because to answer that question, that first question about how much longer do you think you have to be yourself? Who are you? And it is beneficial to look at that, because when a youth is at the university level, particularly, and preparing to be on the job and in the career mode, they may look at what they do otherwise as leisure, as recreation, in their time off. And it may just be seen as like a lot of frivolous stuff. I'll go to the movies, I'll go to the ice cream shop. Me and my friends like to play this game, video games, da 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 da. And then when the youth is making the decision of, well, do I do this corporate conformity job or do I play these video games? Well, you know what? Those video games don't seem so important. I might as well do something that's significant and job. So the decision is comparatively or seemingly easier, because what the youth involve or devote oneself to in terms of feeling free and feeling oneself, feeling genuine affection and amity with others, having a congenial relationship with others who don't disrespect them, who can share a laugh, and additionally with each other, the nature of the interaction is comparatively superficial. It's like, oh, well, you know, we only went to the bar, or oh, we only went to play video games, or this, that, and the other. And so by that point, like the only congenial, or many of the only congenial experiences that person has that they're looking at giving up is comparatively superficial and less meaningful. And so it's like, well, you know, that doesn't seem so, it just seems childish. So, you know, as Paul says, when I was a child, I did childish things, and as an adult, we have to mature. So then say, okay, I guess it's time for the job. What else is there? That's not what we're talking about in terms of who you are. And sometimes, and very often, particularly for youth in elite positions of universities and those type of tracks, it's actually delving deeper within oneself, within one's heritage, within one's lineage, within one's ancestry, to discern, to discover who you actually are. Because it's not the video games. It's beyond the video games. It's beyond the bar. It's beyond the fun stuff that is important at this moment, because it's the escape, it's the refuge from the torment of the competition of society and the judgmentalism and the devaluation and the predatoriness. So, and it's valuable for that purpose of just, get away from me, nasty business. Sharks, stingrays, and orcas. But the efficacy and endurance of that refuge is only so much, because it's superficial and is provided by the predatoriness by and large as well. The bar, the video games, and similarly. So, what we talk about when we say, who are you? To know who you are. The answer to that, as we understand humbly, is one, recognizing the divine presence within ourselves, within each being, within ourselves, divine eternal presence. We are all part of that infinite eternity, continuity. That's one thing, and awakening to that, and like honoring that, speaking to that, doing prayers and meditation that remind us and guide us with that. So that's one thing. And from that, recognizing that as a material being, as an earthly being, we are each part of a continuity, a lineage from creation, from before creation, all of our ancestors. We are a continuation of that with purpose. There's a reason for this line that exists from creation to each of us, and why these lines interact with each other in these roads of creation. That's who we are. That's who you are. To know what that line is. Where does that line come from? Where has that line traveled? Your ancestors, the migration from creation. What are those stories? What are those songs? What are those languages? That's who you are. That's where you come from. Where you come from is who you are at this moment, and guiding where you are going. That's deep. That's roots. And that's what's up. That's who you are. The languages, the songs, the stories. Does this sound familiar for those that listen? Don't mean to say I'm something to listen to, but this is just something I say very often. Songs and stories. And then we go, what else we go with this? Oh yeah, okay, rituals. Again, the rituals that our ancestors practice, wherever we come from, what those rituals are, the relationship with the land, with the nature, with the seasons, with the animals, with the plants, with the water, with the air, with the soleil light, with the darkness, with the earth, the soil, with the emptiness, with the chakras, with the sphirot. Those rituals guide us in this relationship with the elements. That's who you are. That's who we are. And then again, the ethics, how we guide ourselves, our behavior, these bodies, these drones, vehicles. How we employ these vehicles to promote and optimize the well-being of life within us and around us. That's who you are, and that's who we are. We each have a talent, we each have a skill to do that, to promote the well-being of other life, to utilize this vehicle of flesh and blown, how about that? Flesh, bone, and blood. Utilize these vehicles to promote the well-being of life around us and within us. The sense of peace and fulfillment of other beings, of other light, of other vehicles in this life. That is who you are. That is who we are. That does involve vocation. That does involve work. That does involve job. That does involve service, seva. It's the terms that we're talking about. And when we answer that question of who we are, beyond just our likes, beyond just our affinities, beyond just our de facto ad hoc refuges away from the predatoriness and hostilities and vitriol. When we delve and research and practice who we are, that guides us in our decisions away from the acquiescence. It guides us in our decisions of integrity, of staying who we are, because we sing our songs, we tell our stories, we practice our rituals, we live our ethics. And in doing that, singing songs, telling stories, practicing rituals, living ethics, we laugh and we dance with each other proper. We have trust, we have congeniality, we have refuge. Don't have invincibility. It's pain, it's suffering. But we have understanding of purpose and reconciliation and perseverance, Gambaru. And we are ourselves, continually, thoroughly, genuinely. Lightweight, effortlessly. Can we say that? Why not? So that's what we encourage within Kinfolk. It's not a matter of giving up any lucrative opportunities or otherwise, but understanding the nature, the true nature of everything. We're not hating. Everything has its purpose. Everything coming down, crashing down, or whatever at this moment, that's not what we advocate. So everybody just in the corporate jobs or whatever else of conformity and imperialism, just all of a sudden just stopping and da-da-da-da. We don't necessarily advocate that. For those that have ears to hear, have the inclination for inclination, it's invitation. That's generally the third joint. And I can spend 30 minutes trying to figure out what else to say, or I can prepare for prayers and meditation. Rituals. How about that? Let's talk. Let's be about it. We be about it. We be about it. We be about it. And in that process, so we are approaching some observances, particularly within Rastafari, within the African livity, the African diaspora. One is the Black Liberation Day, describing or celebrating and bringing mindfulness to the experience of earthly liberation, particularly spiritual liberation all day, every day, but particularly earthly liberation from political affliction, economic affliction, and additionally on this earth. Recognizing the generally worldwide colorism that is experienced on this world. So anyways, it's a day of celebrating that experience of liberation, of advocating that experience of liberation. It's also the Earth Strong of El Hajj Malik Al-Shabazz, which begins the corridor, a series of observances throughout the next few months in the northern summer, in the Pan-African experience, to again strengthen that resolve of reconciliation and well-being. So, with that in mind, we look again towards the example of His Majesty Haile Selassie I. It's beneficial to recognize that, I've probably said it recently before, very interesting to observe the leadership, the example of Haile Selassie I, His Majesty, the King of Ethiopia, who has strong relationship with the other monarchies of Europe and the world, particularly after the Second World War, where many of the leaderships, whether it's kings, whether it's presidents, whether it's dictators or whatever, who were in power before the Second World War, are not in power after the Second World War. Yet, His Majesty Haile Selassie I is, even though his nation is one of the first to be invaded and forcing him to flee. So, him being returned and restored to the throne, always was on the throne, but in power in Ethiopia, he is a continuity of leadership and authority for the new emergent authorities of the world after World War II, after severe devastation. And so, even before World War II, he was already a world leader, but particularly after World War II, he is a senior world leader. And so, when the United Nations is forming, when the presidents are being elected, when kings and queens are being crowned, he is established and provides guidance to that new leadership. Nearly a century ago, about 70 years ago. So he is a leader within the formation of the Organization of African Unity, which leads the decolonization of the many nations of Africa in that period after the Second World War. So it's a new paradigm of world civilization, and Haile Selassie I is a revered leader around the world because of this, or amidst of this, and a leader of it. So when we talk about being who we are, it's a matter of recognizing the intrinsic sovereignty within each of us, and it's not hyperbole, it's not figurative speech, it's literal sovereignty. Again, that democratic republic mind, it's trippy because it loses sight of the severity, the sanctity, the seriousness of sovereignty. It becomes kind of like a byword, because in a republic, the notion of king, the title of king, is less meaningful. It's like, oh, anybody can be a king. It doesn't matter. We don't recognize kings anyways. But the nature of a king, the nature of a queen, is heavy. There's no pointing fingers, blame. One is responsible for finding solutions to everything around oneself. That's heavy. In a republic, people can say, oh no, that's somebody else's job. That's not mine. You can pass the buck very easily in a republic. In a kingdom, no. It's either you recognize somebody else as being number one and in charge, or you come up with that solution. That's it. So, His Majesty Haile Selassie I is a king of Ethiopia. He's a king of kings in Ethiopia. He's also a king amongst kings in the world, and works with other sovereigns, for solutions, negotiations, compromises, contracts, treaties, and additionally, that provides us with guidance of how we progress in this post-republic society, this post-republic civilization. Yeah. Yes. How do we do that? How do we accept that responsibility of sovereignty? How do we accept the consequences of our decisions fully, without cushions? Like, yo, I could have done that. No, it's gone. It's done. You don't get that back. It happened. It's already, yeah, it was only 20 seconds ago. It's gone. Nah, it's not happening. No, there's no complaint department. No, there's no lost and found. That's sovereignty. You wanted to be number one. Welcome. How do we do that? How do we live with that? How do we walk in each day knowing the seriousness of the consequences of not just our actions and not just our words, but even simply our thoughts. I didn't even say it. It doesn't matter. I didn't say anything. No, done. It's done. Sovereignty is heavy, particularly in an age where we have so much information. The further information we have, the further responsibility we have. The further technology that we have, the further accountability that we have. And all that means is like the less that we actually can do, to be honest. We don't have freedoms to just do what we want to do. There's consequences. So there's consequences of me continuing to talk because the sparrows are like, yo, Peter, where's the rice at, yo? Come on. We got eggs. We got nests. What's going on? Yo, I'm working on the same thing. What's going on? Anyways, all right. So His Majesty Haile Selassie provides example. I mean, we can learn from words. We can learn from preaching. But we learn so much further from observing what other people do, how other people hold themselves, conduct themselves. The stories others sovereigns share, the songs that sovereigns share, the rituals that sovereigns share, the ethics that sovereigns share. That is one of the valuable gifts and treasures that His Majesty Haile Selassie shares, are those examples of song stories, rituals, and ethics. How to go through trials and tribulations where there is no guarantee. When he writes his autobiography, he don't know when he's in those experiences how it's going to end. Even to the point where there is that earthly conclusion and that return with Creator. So, in that trod, there are treasures that help us in our trod and guide us in remembering our sovereignty and retaining our sovereignty in the decisions to be who we are, to stay who we are in this life. Our vocations, our work, our service, our savor in this life, to be who we are and stay who we are, and to encourage others to be who they be. Even when kinfolk speak with very proper King's English, Queen's English, it's King's English again, is it not, English speakers? But there are many different English-speaking kingdoms at this moment now, yeah. So, kings and queens, how about that? And emperors, blah, blah. So, with crooked teeth and straight teeth and pretty, pretty smiles. Now we're getting a little bit frivolous. So, let's continue on. I'll share one other thing with respect to His Majesty Haile Selassie. In the earthly life of His Majesty Haile Selassie, there is a specific era of civilization and a specific mission that he has concerning his constituency, his kingdom of Ethiopia. Preparing it for modernization, including it within modernization, and additionally. So when we study and heed the examples of our ancestors, prophets, and sages, sovereigns, it's also beneficial to recognize the context of each one and recognizing that a certain action in one generation, how it applies to the circumstances of subsequent generations. So at this moment, the priority is other than modernization. To be honest, it's actually a little bit counterbalancing modernization. There's an overprevalence. How about that? It's so much, it's overprevalence. There's the overprevalence of technology and science that is imposing on existence, meaningfulness. All the things that we're able to do with technology are actually making the activity less meaningful, like these types of interactions, compared to being in person and experiencing the energy and vibration in person. So, the guidance, whereas His Majesty Haile Selassie works diligently to build infrastructure, roads, hospitals, universities in Ethiopia 100 years ago. Today, it's a matter of recognizing what the needs are of this moment and organizing those needs. In some ways, it is roads and hospitals and universities. In other ways, it's withdrawing from roads and universities and hospitals. What a serious priorities, actually. So it's a matter of recognizing what the needs are, and the big thing is just dutifully and altruistically and sincerely, authentically, genuinely devoting oneself to that work. The discipline daily of routines, rituals, prayers, meditation, also nutrition, mindfulness, study, how we communicate, being humble, staying on track, staying on purpose, staying on point, on task, and utilizing our abilities of communication to connect and build with others who are similarly inclined. And with that, we give all thanks and praise to the Most High. Blessed love and peace in Rastafari.